Hello and welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 26.
I'm Cam and this is Jilly. This week's Torah portion is Shemot, which means we're starting a new book. That's Exodus.
Yay!
The name Shemot means the names, which is really cool because when you look at the beginning of Genesis, which is Bereshit, and then you go on into Exodus, Shemot, it actually means in the beginning, these are the names.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're going to learn about the names, and that's one thing that this Torah portion starts with. It starts Exodus 1 to the end of Exodus chapter 5. So the names are important. And one thing I love is while it's talking about the names, in the first chapter we see the two names of the midwives who are trying to save the boys from dying, and their names are mentioned, while Pharaoh, which is a title, all the Egyptians are just names. Titles. There are no names. No one, you don't know. So we have the two midwives who were asked by Pharaoh to please take care of the baby boys when they're born. The females were fine, but take care of the boys. And they refused to do so. And what's interesting is because of that, Pharaoh doesn't respond directly to Israel and orders it done outright. What he says is fine. Every male, whether he is Egyptian or Hebrew or whatever else, every male was going to be killed.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
They don't. I think that we just always think it was only to the Hebrews. But
Right.
You see, if we back up to the first part of Genesis, a little bit further up, what we see is actually the fulfillment of two prophecies. One from Genesis 48:16, where Jacob tells, he's blessing Ephraim and Manasseh and saying that you're going to multiply in the land, and they not in Egypt. And so they are. Here we see where they're saying they're in abundance. They're not in Goshen anymore. They're in Goshen and every other part of Egypt that there is.
They've assimilated.
Yes, they have assimilated. Though you still have some up in Goshen.
Right.
And then in Genesis 50:24, we have where Joseph promises that there will be a visitation, to wait. We talked about that last week. Wait. So he's saying wait, and now the visitation's coming. And what's interesting, what we don't see in Genesis, but what we do see in Exodus is while they're waiting for that visitation, there seems to be some clue words or code words that are given. And that's what we're going to see in chapter 3 and 4 that Moses is concerned about. I've got to be able to give the right words so they realize, hey, I'm not just making this up. Think about in the Brit Hadashah,
Right.
Test every spirit, right?
Yes.
Well, that's what Israel was doing. They were testing to make sure that who was claiming to have the visitation was accurate and was one that they could verify from what they knew from Joseph. So when we look at the oppression that begins in chapter 1, we see that there's a taskmaster that's been sent out. But the word that we see for later on in chapter 3 and chapter 5 is nagas, Nagas, which these two words are somewhat different. Now hold on, because you're going to notice a pattern that we're seeing right now with us. And that is first, see, Israel, what they're concerned about is that if the new leader, because there's a new Pharaoh, and we know from Acts 7 that it's a different Pharaoh, meaning of a different type, okay? Not just Egyptian, but he seems to be maybe of a different, there's all kinds of speculation who he is. We're not going to go in there. But he's from somewhere else, different type of leadership. He doesn't know Joseph. The truth is he doesn't understand, nor does he appreciate or recognize the power or the hand of
Joseph
God,
did.
the hand of God that saved Egypt. He does not accept that. That's going to come in chapter 5. So anyhow, he's concerned that, look, they may turn against us. There's so many of them. And he's scared that they'll leave the land. It's their goods. Because remember, they've prospered all during the famine. They didn't sell anything. Pharaoh actually gave to them land.
You certainly don't want your wealthy people leaving.
Exactly, because there goes your tax base. So what happens is they decide to tax. So these tax masters are not slave drivers like we think of.
It's like the Maccabees. You
It is
talked
like
about
that,
that
exactly.
a couple of weeks ago.
Same with the Maccabees. It's the money. Let's keep them here, and let's maybe even test their patronage. Well, I mean, if you love Egypt, you're gonna support us, right?
Yes.
So give us money, and then later, what happens is maybe their money's run out. That's fine, but if you can't give it in money, you can work it off.
Yes.
So what we see in chapter 3 is now they're working it off. And then by the time we get to 5, they're so far in debt of having to work it off that they're working all the time, and they're making bricks and they're enslaved. But they're still not enslaved like we think, where they're enslaved and housed. And, you know, I think a lot of times we think of the plantation times here in America. But that's not how the slavery was. Because if you think about it, we have Aaron leaving at will to go meet Moses, no problem.
Right.
You have the elders that are going to go with Moses, we know from chapter 3. And so then we also have the captains and some of the chiefs in chapter 5 who are addressing Pharaoh. Okay, slaves don't just go up and address. They don't go up and go, it's your fault. We can't make this many bricks. It's your fault for not giving us. But here we see where the Hebrews, while in slavery, no hope.
Yeah.
They have no hope. Okay, we break free from it. For what? I mean, you know, now they do hold on lightly, but they hold on to that promise that the visitation will come. And it's interesting because not until the Lord hears their cries, and their cry isn't, give us the Egypt we used to live in. Give us the America we used to live in. That's not their cry. Their cry is deliver us, period. However it's done, deliver us. Yes. That's the cry. It's no longer depending on what they had. It's now looking straight to the Lord and going, you're our only hope. You're it. Deliver us. Because remember, as this pressure is happening, Moses is born. So as the hardship's coming, the Redeemer's there. If you think about that with Yeshua. Yes. Remember, we have Anna and Simeon who are there waiting for him. They know. I mean, the scepter's already been removed. Yes. They know. Half the people are like, there's no Messiah. Another half are like, well, no, this is a sign that means he's coming.
He is here. Yes.
So here we have this oppression. They're being separated, okay? And so now you have, I'm sure those who are like, this got to be soon. And they're crying out. So they're like, the Lord listens. It's got to be soon. And I wanted to read Acts 7:23, having to do with Moses. I think this is very crucial for us. It says, and when he was 40 years old, it came to be in his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them being wronged, he defended and revenged him who was oppressed, smiting the Egyptian. And he thought that his brothers would have understood that Elohim would give deliverance to them by his hand, but they did not understand. But talking about this very important incident that happened, and if we really stop and see the patterns, we see Yeshua. Because see, the first time he comes, Moses hits that age 40, okay? He goes out to his brethren, and he sees them being oppressed. And what's he do? He responds. Okay. And in that, the two Hebrews go, well, you're going to kill us too? Who are you? Who put you as ruler over us? Okay, Moses has an issue right now. They don't recognize my authority.
Yes.
Well, the first time Yeshua came, they didn't recognize his authority. Okay?
So he had to leave.
That's right. And he leaves, and what's he get? He gets a bride. Yeshua leaves, and that bride is being called out, right? And then he's going to return. Moses returns. And when Moses returns this next time, when the Lord calls them, what does he say? He says, how are they going to believe me? I'm paraphrasing. How are they going to believe me? Who am I going to say sent me? If we look at it in the context in which it's given, what we have is Moshe saying, how's anyone basically going to believe that you visited? Right. Okay, they know we're waiting on the visitation, but how are they going to accept? Because they didn't accept me the first time. How are they going to accept me this time that you have visited? That you've really called it on your timing. Remember, this is 40 years after that first. Remember, when they finally leave, it's 40 years until they actually fulfill going into land.
Yes.
Interesting patterns.
Yes, it is.
So if we look down in Exodus 3:12, and then Moses says to the Lord, see, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, has sent me to you, and they say to me, what's his name? What is it that I'm to say to them? Okay. What's in a name? What is your name? So what we have here is not really who are you, but what authority is this? What's your name? Are you going to give us the secret password? Because until then, we don't believe you. We don't believe God sent you. Not that they don't believe God. They don't believe God sent Moses. That's what's happening here. And so then the Lord says to Moses, I am that which I am. And he said, you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent you. And Elohim said further to Moses, you are to say to the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is a remembrance to all generations. Now go to the elders of Israel together and say to them that the Lord your God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have indeed visited you and seen what is done to you. All right, right there we have Genesis 50 being answered,
So
where Joseph says he's coming.
So is that our code word today?
I don't
God
know.
do you serve?
But do you know what?
The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
I
I've heard
do
great
think-
stories.
I do think that's very important because the title God, I mean, that doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right.
I don't know who you're talking about. When you pray to God, I'm going to pray to God for you. Great. Which one? So here, this is my name forever. And he just said, you have to look at the way this goes back to what was last said, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then the next thing he does is repeats that. Because how many times do you find people who are like, well, yeah, that's the Old Testament God. I worship Jesus.
What about our kids today? They're being taught in school that Allah is the same as the Christian God. But they would never claim that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
But they will
stop
say,
at Abraham.
They say Abraham.
I understand now.
Yes.
I understand. So
And
we
the
are
second-
to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac,
and Jacob. That's right, because that is
Not
where
Abraham,
Israel
Isaac,
comes from.
and Esau, or however you want to
Or
get back
Abraham,
to.
Isaac, and stop.
Yes.
Because Isaac has two sons. So you still have to go. It's through the line in which Yeshua comes, which is Israel. So what we see is that the Lord is showing him, look, here's the power, here's my authority. The one that gave Abraham and Isaac and Jacob the very promises, that's who's here. And that seems to be enough for everybody to go, wow, okay. So now we got the word. We got the code for the word that when he goes to them, they're going to believe. But I do want to talk about the signs because Moshe is like, okay, now once I give them the authority and I show them, what if that's not enough? What if they need something else? So the Lord gives them 3 signs. The first sign is that he's going, well, the serpent, throw down your rod. And the serpent goes and he grabs the serpent by the tail. I think this is important because remember, everything goes in a circle and each time it's fulfilled more accurately or to its fullness. Well, these 3 signs, what we often find in the Word, things that happen in the Brit Hadashah, and things that happen in the Torah or the Tanakh seem to be bookends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Revelation, then to Revelation, go to the first of Genesis, and you have these bookends, and they move in, and then they meet with Yeshua.
Yes.
Now we have 3 signs from Moses, and we're going to find that those hook with Yeshua too, but in the opposite direction. So the first one Moses does is the serpent. He grabs it by the tail. He's taking control of that. The last one we have Yeshua doing on the cross is crushing the head of the serpent, not the tail.
It's the other way.
The next one we have is leprosy. Healing leprosy and then healing leprosy. Yeshua is the king from Isaiah 53. He's actually considered the king of the lepers. Yes. He heals leprosy. So one of the signs they understood for the Redeemer Moses was the leprosy because it's pointing to the ultimate Redeemer. Then we have the last one was water to wine. Water to blood for Moses. But blood represents
The wine.
the wine. A wine represents blood. And Yeshua's very first one was changing the water to wine.
That's right.
So it's kind of neat how it does this. Both Redeemers. And remember, we have Moshe who in Deuteronomy is like, look, there is another one like me coming. And it talks about that in Acts 7 as well, where he says, the prophet like me, you got to believe.
I want to say something real quick.
Okay.
So this is really exciting for me. This pattern of them recognizing Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came from the physical deliverance.
Correct.
Now, when Yeshua came the first time, there was no question of what God he came in the name of.
Right.
Okay? But now you have people all over the world who are saying, wait a minute, we have to go back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and serve him, and there's going to be another physical redemption.
I love it. Yes. When we go back and see that redemption, and that is what we go back and speak about all the time, there's going to be a greater one that overshadows the Egyptian redemption so much that we don't even speak of that anymore because the next one to Jerusalem is so...
It's worldwide.
This idea of authority we also see in chapter 5, and that's where they go up to Moses and Aaron, go up to Pharaoh and say, hey, we need to go out and worship our Lord. Okay? And Pharaoh's like, who's this God? I don't know this God.
Right.
Again, what authority are... He didn't argue that he's a God. He didn't argue when Moses says, look, we need to go so the either pestilence or the sword doesn't fall on us. He didn't argue that. He's like, well, I'm sorry, you just can't go. Because you remember, Pharaoh is considered a God.
Yes.
So he's thinking, so you're suggesting there's someone more powerful than me? I don't buy it. So what we see throughout the plagues, right, and what's coming is going to be proving to Pharaoh all the aspects of the Lord. And that's what we'll see in next week. We thank you for joining us, and we hope that this has whet your appetite, given you a springboard, something to do more studies, because there's so much in this week's it's really not fair at all. But I hope that you guys will have a great week exploring and delving in and finding the treasures that the Lord has there for us to all learn.
Yes.
We'll see you on the flip side from the Brit Hadashah, and thanks for joining us. Shalom.